What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to revisit the Proto HuP ONE Touring Car Edition. Funnily enough, I actually barely have driven this car in the Crew 2, so after this update, I did want to jump back into this thing to actually see how it does handle, and to really see if this car is actually going to be useful. So, if I do remember correctly, the last time I actually drove this car was back in the Crew 1, and funnily enough, the car was actually insanely good and or slightly broken when it first did come out, and or you actually did get this vehicle from collecting all the car parts around the map. But the HuP ONE surprisingly also has a pretty high top speed, hitting around 255 miles per hour, which, to be honest guys, is probably not going to be insanely impressive. And the main reason for that is going to come down to the fact that many of the touring cars in the Crew 2 do actually do around 250 to like 255. So if the car actually hits like 260 and or above, then I would say it's going to be pretty dang impressive. But to be honest, I would say the HuP ONE's most likely going to be almost average and or around the same as most of the other touring cars I have tested out. But one of the biggest highlights, guys, obviously is not going to be the top speed of these cars. It really is going to come down to how these cars handle, though, because of course they actually can hit around 250. The biggest thing, though, is are they going to have that overall speed and or handling on a racetrack, which most of the summits really are going to be on the racetracks, and they tend not to be on those bigger US Speed Tour events, which if they are, of course, that higher top speed is going to help. But one thing I did notice, guys, about the HuP ONE is this car has a lot of agility. It really does turn insanely sharp around corners, similar to the NSX, which honestly is going to be one of my favorite touring cars after this update so far. And one thing I also noticed about this HuP ONE, guys, is I did find the handling to be very similar to the NSX, which I really do think is going to be a big positive, because at the moment, the NSX is actually my favorite touring car in the Crew 2, at least right now, until, other cars do start popping up and or I start testing out more of these to see what they can do to the NSX. But nonetheless, though, the HuP ONE really is going to be a great overall vehicle. And it does turn out, guys, this car is going to have some great overall speed around corners. Now, one thing I did notice about this car, though, is yes, it is going to be a 6-speed, but I do think it comes down to how this car is geared and the way that you actually do shift it if you are running manual. So I was finding myself being in the wrong gear around certain turns and or upshifting when I shouldn't have. And sometimes when I was downshifting going into certain corners, I would basically go down one more gear. When I actually did not have to, then I would then have to shift back up. And if you were to do that, you're definitely going to lose some speed in some areas. But I wouldn't necessarily say that's going to be like a fault of the car. And it's more of going to be me not running cars like this that often. So I will definitely be jumping into summits with the HuP ONE in the future to really see what this car can do against something like the Lamborghini and or one of the lovely Ferraris that also seem to be insanely good. One of the best things I also noticed, guys, about these touring cars being better is the fact that now we can actually jump into something like the HuP ONE and still do decently in a summit to actually get into Platinum, which is always going to be a great sight to see. And one thing I also found kind of interesting, guys, I do think the HuP ONE is actually going to be one of the least used vehicles in the entire touring car category, which I really can't blame you, because before I feel like a lot of these cars did get overshadowed. I really do feel like after this Season 8 Episode 1 update, though, that many of these cars really are going to be greatly improved and or a lot better when it comes to their overall handling, which I do think we can all agree a lot of these cars really did struggle tremendously with before. I would like to know what you guys think about this HuP ONE in the comments below, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more insight.